4 miles from where we are sitting right here is a part of Washington, D.C. called Anacostia. And in Anacostia is a shelter called the House of Help, the City of Hope. Years ago, at this location, it was so crime-ridden that this apartment complex was run by gangs, crime, drugs, prostitution. To put a picture in your mind, it was so bad that when the utility guy went to check the meter, he had to go with a police escort. And then a woman in the community got involved. Her name is Shirley Holloway. She worked with a local philanthropist, a local nonprofit run by my friend Bob Woodson, and the District of Columbia to buy this apartment complex and turn it into the House of Help. Since then, thousands of people have come through this program facing addiction and homelessness and have turned their lives around. It goes to show what can happen when people in the community come together to meet a need. So many people have seen their lives turned around. Let me tell you about one person. On one of my visits to this place, just 4 miles that direction, I met a guy named James Woods. James got out of the Army and fell in with the wrong crowd. He joined a gang. He sold drugs. And in his words, he was really good at violence. And so James was the enforcer of the gang. And predictably, he got addicted, he went homeless, and he went to prison. When he came out of prison, he knew he needed to get his life back together. He didn't know how until he went to the House of Help. Then he got clean. Then he got a job. Then he got married. He turned his life around. The question is, how? What made this work? If you ask James this question, which I have, he says one thing and one thing only: Shirley Holloway. He tells me the story about how when he was coming through the program and getting his act together, and he met the woman of his dreams and he was about to be married, he was almost going to go back to jail. And Shirley Holloway paid his legal fees to keep him out of jail. He promised to pay that money back, and he was giving her his paychecks. What he didn't know was that she was saving his money, keeping it in his savings account, so that when his wedding was about to arrive, he gave him all the money back so that he and his wife could have a nice wedding. Nobody had ever done anything like that for him in his life before. Nobody had ever put him first. And so the reason Shirley Holloway got through to James Woods is because she had credibility. He trusted her. So when she told him to clean up his act, when she taught him new skills, when she held him accountable and made him embrace personal responsibility, he listened to her. Credibility is the key. Credibility is the key to unlocking people's potential. Credibility is the key to make our policy effective. And what James Woods will tell you is, credibility doesn't come in bulk. You can't legislate it. They don't teach it at social worker school. Credibility comes small scale. It's gradual. It's personal. And I will argue that credibility is the most important weapon in our war on poverty. We've been at this war for 50 years. And I don't think you can say that this war is anything other than a stalemate. Upward mobility is no better than it was when we started. If you were raised poor, you are no more likely to get out of poverty than we were 50 years ago. I'm not saying we haven't made advances, we have. But what we have today is a safety net that is basically designed to catch people falling into poverty. What we need is a safety net that is designed to lift people out of poverty. So, what's the problem? Well, I think the problem is we need a new strategy. I think the problem is the way we think about poverty. We typically think about poverty as a form of deprivation, a lack of money. We treat empty wallets like potholes. Fill them up, then move on. And so for the last 50 years, we have had over 80 different programs filling 80 different holes in people's budgets, energy, education, housing assistance, so on and so forth. And when you take a look at all of these programs, they're not coordinated. And naturally, these programs are based on income. So the less you make, the more you get. The flip side of that, of course, is as you progress, as you work, as you earn more, you lose a lot. Make a little bit more, lose a ton. because the cutoff is really steep. Let's take an example. Say you're a single mom and you've got one child and you're making minimum wage. And you get a job offer to make $3 an hour more. After you've calculated the taxes you'll pay and the benefits you'll lose, this mom will only get to keep 10 cents of every extra dollar she makes. It doesn't pay to take the job. And so while we've been filling holes because we think of poverty as just a function of deprivation, we've actually been building a trap, trapping people where they are. Because poverty is more than just deprivation. It's a form of isolation. We're isolating people from the rest of society. We're isolating people from meeting up with those people like the Shirley Holloways who have credibility, who can help them get on with their life. A teacher, a mentor, a boss. And so I believe we need to issue a call to action. I think we need to rethink the war on poverty. We need a new battle plan. And the primary weapon in a battle plan in the war on poverty is not the money we spend in Washington. It's the people in our communities who have the credibility to connect and reach with people. Now, the question I typically get from people is, I see, you're a Republican. You just see that this is a way to cut the budget, to cut spending on the poor. Not at all. I put out a new plan to revitalize the safety net that doesn't reduce spending on the poor by 1 penny. This is not about saving money. This is about saving lives. My whole point in this is we shouldn't minimize, we should customize. We should customize aid to the person's particular needs, and we should always encourage work, and we should always make sure that we don't displace those mentors, those Shirley Holloways, those people with credibility who can move people from poverty out of poverty. The other point I would say is the federal government is good at a lot of things, but not at everything. The federal government can provide resources, but the federal government should be in the rear guard, manning the supply lines. It's the people in our communities that ought to be the vanguard, manning the front lines in the war on poverty. If you get this role reversal right, then I think that's one of the biggest things we can accomplish in a new strategy in having an effective war on poverty. Now, the other question I get is, why do you care about this? You're a Republican. It's funny. There's a point to it, though. I'm also an American. And I believe in the American idea. The condition of your birth, it doesn't determine the outcome of your life. You work hard, you play by the rules, you can get ahead. You make a mistake in life, you can redeem yourself. Problem is, a lot of people in this country don't believe that anymore. And so, if the American idea is not true for everybody, then it's really not true at all, is it? We have to be honest with ourselves about it. And the reason why we all should care about poverty is it is really a challenge to who we are. Now, there are a lot of new ideas that we're working on. I want to talk to you about one idea. I call it evidence-based policymaking. There's a bill I'm moving through Congress that's going very well that I have with a partner of mine, a liberal Democrat from Washington State, Patty Murray, in the U.S. Senate. And what we want to do is set up this commission on evidence-based policymaking so that we can address a glaring blind spot that we see with the federal government. Right now, the federal government values and views and measures success in the war on poverty solely based on inputs, based on effort. How many programs have we created? How much spending are we on these programs? How many people are on these programs? We don't measure success based on outcomes, based on results. How many people are getting good jobs? How many people are getting off welfare into a life of self-sufficiency? How many people are getting out of poverty? So what we're trying to do is have this commission say, design the metrics, make them objective, so that we can actually measure the outcomes of our efforts to see what works and what doesn't. That way, we can get out of the stalemate that we're having in this country, where all the debates are basically Republicans versus Democrats, liberals versus conservatives, and get into a debate about what works and what doesn't work. If we do that, we believe we can make substantial progress. There's a lot of reasons in this country to be dismayed, to be demoralized, to think the status quo is just never going to change. You read the newspapers, you turn on the TV, you think Washington's broken, that's all you say. You know what I've learned from just going around this country? There's a lot of exciting things happening. There are thousands of people fighting poverty, helping people make a difference. We have to find them. We have to learn from them. We have to support them. And sometimes you find that it's right underneath our noses, just like a little shelter 4 miles from here. Thank you very much.